It is becoming increasingly clear that there is an assault on freedom of the press, on free speech in America, something that I'll be talking much more about. Who is it being waged by? Well, Donald Trump and his allies. And that's not an overstatement. This is not hyperbole, and we're going to walk through it here. Do you remember the story that we covered that I guess Trump would describe as an editing scandal of some sort? And it related to the interview that Kamala Harris conducted with CBS. And like all of CBS's interviews, they edited it. And Trump had a problem with how they edited it. And so then he started calling for CBS to be taken off of the air. And he stepped further, actually suing CBS for $20 billion, saying they engaged in election interference. You're going to see, if you missed this story, the clips that are at issue here. And it proves how absolutely ridiculously bonkers Trump is. But during an interview, we caught Trump telling a complete lie. And so I want to play that for you. And then I'm going to get into how this whole edited footage scandal, as Trump wants us to believe that it is indeed a scandal. But it's not the one that he wants us to think. It's not about Kamala Harris, not about CBS's editing, but instead about his response to it and how he's using lies to justify an assault, a really terrifying one, on the press. And now he's wanting to grab control of the FCC to do so. I'll give you all those details as we go through this, but let's start with this clip from the Musk-Trump interview, the co-president's interview on Fox News with Sean Hannity.
Violation of the Constitution. They don't even know what they're talking. Well,
it's absurd.
Know. It's just a con job. It's a big con job. And they're so bad for the country, so dangerous and so bad. And the media is so bad. When I watch MSNBC, which I don't watch much, but you have to watch the enemy on occasion, the level of arrogance and cheating, and they're just horrible people. These are
lie.
Horrible people.
They tell conspiracy theories.
And they start up with the Constitution. They couldn't care less about the Constitution. CNN, likewise. I mean, I watch them asking questions with, the hatred with the. I said, "Why are you asking the question with such anger? You're asking me a normal."
So we haven't gotten to the relevant part. But first, just a reminder, if you want to support the show, the free way is clicking the subscribe button on YouTube. And then if you want to become a member, you can do it by clicking the join button below. And also, you're going to have to, just for the sake of this conversation, I know you're thinking, Luke, mention it. Mention the fact that Trump talks like he's in sixth grade. I know. It's so wandering. It's so confusing. It's so grammatically junky, but we can't even spend time on that. There's too many important things.
Question, but you see the bias. The bias is so incredible. Those two are bad. PBS is bad. AP is bad. CBS is terrible. I mean, CBS now, they changed an answer in Kamala. They asked her some questions. She answered them like, a low IQ person, the opposite of him, the absolute opposite. But she gave a horrible answer. They took the entire answer out and they put another answer that she gave 20 minutes later into as the answer. I've never even heard of that. I thought I heard of it all.
I'm going to, just for the sake of saving time.
How do you do that, Sean? And they're bad, and they're also and then also low IQ. And yes, Mr. President. He said that the whole answer was taken out, and then an answer from 20 minutes later was stuck in. False. It was one answer, and then like a bunch of Trump interviews, sometimes when you have a longer answer, they'll take one part of it here, one part of it there. And it was one answer right at the time where that question was presented. Total lie. We've gone through that before. You're going to see the reference clips in a second. But think about what Trump is now engaging in. The National Review, because of lies like that one, Trump is creating reports like this, said, so last night, Mr. Trump attempted to seize control of, more or less, the entire federal government. He signed an executive order purporting to bring all independent agencies, including the FCC, FTC, SEC, try to say that 3 times fast, and perhaps most chillingly, the Federal Election Commission, under his individual control. No other president has done this. Most have avoided even the appearance of interfering in the workings of these agencies for fear of being viewed as wielding inappropriate control over the affairs of agencies designed by Congress to be independent. Then we move from that to this from Brookings Institute. Presidents have the right to express themselves and frequently do on matters before the FCC, unlike a cabinet secretary. However, and this is the key part, the chairman of the agency does not report to the president. The FCC is chartered by Congress as an independent agency separate from the executive. The president's input that CBS should lose its license, an FCC decision, and its relationship to a lawsuit from which he could personally benefit is unusual. And this is, I know intellectual folks writing an article like this don't want to use more aggressive language, but unusual, really? Unusual. A dog in a tutu is unusual. This is a constitutional crisis. The New York Times headlined Paramount in settlement talks with Trump over 60 Minutes lawsuit. The Times reported a settlement would be an extraordinary concession by a major U.S. media company to a sitting president, especially in a case in which there's no evidence that the network got the facts wrong or damaged the plaintiff's reputation. Not at all. If you haven't seen this story, I keep saying it, I know, but we're going to get to just how absurd this is if you don't know the interview moments that are being referenced. The Washington Post reports NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, NPR, and KCBS Radio all have one thing in common. They're under scrutiny from the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, which is now being led by Brendan Carr, a Republican who has praised President Donald Trump as a leader in combating bias in the media. So you now have the FCC getting themselves up in the business and wanting to make inconvenient the lives of those at outlets. You'll notice I don't see Fox News here. I don't see Newsmax here. No, only outlets that Trump has spoken out against. In response to this, Brendan Carr, who's just a Trump bootlicker and ass kisser, said, essentially, you have Trump derangement syndrome. That's the reaction. The criticism of Brendan Carr leveraging his position as FCC chair to go after Trump's political enemies and launch these investigations and reopen investigations and outlets that Trump doesn't like. The response is you have Trump derangement syndrome, which is now the catch-all for you dare to be critical of the dear leader. Now, I've shown this to you before, but I want to play it again, this segment from Jake Tapper, because I think he explained very nicely and succinctly and one part after another and brings the receipts, this whole scenario that's playing out and how, number one, Trump has had a much more outrageous. The Kamala one, there is no outrage, but Trump actually had a kind of outrageous editing scandal that we've talked about. And so he's projecting that onto Kamala, and he'll give you all the details, and then it'll get to what is so chilling, which is the way the FCC is going to get CBS in line by threatening to take away a deal that would make all these people a bunch of money.
In our politics lead, there's a story playing out between Paramount and CBS News, President Trump, and the Federal Communications Commission that any American who values a free and independent press should care about, including Trump supporters who should not like the precedent that is being set. The story started last fall when 60 Minutes interviewed then Vice President Kamala Harris. Then candidate Trump did not agree to sit down with the news magazine, but nonetheless, he protested how 60 Minutes edited the Harris interview, specifically the answer she gave after correspondent Bill Whitaker asked the vice president why Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was not listening to the Biden administration. Now, in a preview clip that ran on CBS's Face the Nation Sunday morning, Harris was shown answering like this.
The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But during 60 Minutes airing, Harris gave this answer to the same question.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Now, CBS News explained the discrepancy by saying they had merely run two different parts from the same longer answer, and that is indeed what the transcript revealed. Now, CBS News did not post the transcript at the time, but they did turn it over to the FCC this week, and the FCC released the transcript to the public yesterday. But that is far from what Donald Trump alleged happened.
They took the answer out in its entirety, threw it away, and they put another answer in.
By the way, let me just quickly pause this. And to those of you who have seen that before, we're getting to some other stuff after finishing. But in one of these media articles, they show you the answer and the different parts, which again, I've explained it before. Even talking about it, I feel like the wording that you are forced to use, it almost bolsters in this gross way, looking at the text as if this is anything other than every interview gets edited and you just can't include the full interview every time you play it. Because on the morning show, they're going to want to do that moment, talk about it, move on from it. On 60 Minutes, there's a certain allocated time in between commercial breaks and all that. And so they actually does a service by saying, all right, her answer was of a certain length. And in the two places that we played it, we can't fit the whole thing in there. But we'll play part of the answer here, part of the answer there. It's all part of one question. And so if you saw both, now you get the full extended question or the answer. But the interesting thing is, it makes sense that this is one of the places they chose to cut down on the meat a little bit, because there was a lot of reiterating her point. Like, here's the full answer. Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region. And we're not going to stop doing that. We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end. So that's the full answer. At one part, they stopped it at region. The second part, because it's her saying the same thing, it's reiterating her point, is what you see in red there. All a part of the same answer as the transcript proves, even though Trump says it was from 20 minutes later because he's a complete and total liar. But if you want to see a time where there was outrageous editing, look to a Trump interview. Tapper will get to that.
Now, that is, as we saw from the transcript, obviously not what happened at all. But still, Donald Trump called this incident, quote, the greatest fraud in broadcast history, unquote. Mr. Trump said, quote, CBS should lose its license, unquote. And then Trump sued under news distortion rules for $10 billion. Now, the suit is widely regarded by legal and First Amendment experts as, well, as one put it, quote, a frivolous and dangerous attempt by a politician to control the news media. Broadcasters have a right to edit interviews. It's editorial judgment. For example, Fox in June 2024 aired this.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
But that wasn't Trump's actual whole answer. It was a taped interview. And as Semaphore noted at the time, Mr. Trump, in the full, unedited version, sounded a lot less definitive about releasing the Epstein files. Here's the whole answer.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there, because that was a weird situation and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd go a long way toward that one.
Quite different, right? Now look, Fox had every right to make that edit. Now, did that edit make Trump look more decisive, less equivocating? Did it make Trump, therefore, look better? Yep. Was that why Fox did it? I have no idea. Maybe they just had some timing issues. Either way, it's Fox's right to do it, just as it was Fox's right to do it when they had Trump's surprise visit to a Bronx barber shop on air, which they also cut down significantly and, coincidentally or not, flatteringly, Fox had the right to do it. And not just because cable and broadcast networks have different rules. Now, the 60 Minutes editing case would almost certainly fail spectacularly in court, according to legal experts. But Paramount Global, which owns CBS News, is currently trying to merge with Skydance Media. And in order to do that, Paramount will need the approval of the Trump administration, specifically the FCC, which, under its new commissioner, Brendan Carr, has suggested that Trump's news distortion complaint will be considered by the FCC before any merger can be approved. Enter Sherry Redstone, the owner of Paramount, who stands to make about $8 billion if this deal goes through. Said one CBS News employee to me about this, quote, "Everyone expects Sherry settles with Donald Trump. She is not concerned about her legacy, democracy, or the work we do. It's only about the deal, her pocketbook. The only way she wouldn't settle is if Skydance sent her a smoke signal to hold off. Surely they realize a settlement."
So, because we looked at it before, I'll stop it there. But breaking down excellently there by Jake Tapper. Sherry Redstone here, the chair of Paramount, who stands to make a lot of money off of this merger, is now weighing, do I do what is in the interest of the First Amendment and say, no, we're not gonna let you shake us down for $20 billion or whatever, settle it for whatever amount we would agree to. We're not gonna give Trump money because he thinks he can leverage his power by now seizing more control than any president has ever tried to leverage of the FCC to hold hostage this merger deal to get us to admit defeat and agree that we did election interference by doing nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. Trump, who's then having his FCC chair open these investigations into other liberal outlets, is showing those outlets what happens when you do things he doesn't like. He will use, to the tune of billions of dollars, he will hold hostage money that you want for these powerful, leaders of companies and stuff, to get you to act the way that he wants. He'll punish you. And who knows, maybe the FCC is going to go as far as to try to do what Trump has said he wants it to do, which is get CBS off the air. This is the very threat to the media, threat to free speech that MAGA pretended like they were living under when they weren't. Can you imagine? I've said it before. Can you imagine if Biden did this with a Fox News? You would have, understandably so, nonstop 24/7 coverage of the collapsing of American democracy on Fox News airwaves. It would be constant. And that's what's taking place here. And now you have a Sherry Redstone who cares more about the deal going through than standing up on principle. In a sense, you get it. Her job is she doesn't probably see her job as a warrior for the cause, but we should all understand that this is not just a precedent, but it's a shakedown. It's a threat to the rest of the media that we will make your life a living hell if you slight Trump. That's not what America is supposed to stand for. And it's so brazen. Speaking of concerning recent actions, here is Trump and his legal counsel, or one of his legal advisors, announcing that the president is the only person who should have the opinions on law.
Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. No, that's not true. We have a whole branch of government that's supposed to make proclamations on what the law is. And then continuing, he's doing the same thing with the Associated Press. The specifics of how Trump is trying to be into submission media outlets are less relevant, but instead seeing the through line that whatever is the most convenient way to induce harm for outlets who aren't acting the way that he'd like, he will utilize those. So for CBS, it's a pretty big one, which is I want to get you off the air, or I at least want to force you in front of the world to admit to my lie and give me a bunch of money. Otherwise, that merger deal, how's your family? How's your merger deal? Right? That's it. On the Associated Press, because they dare to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico, he's saying they are banned from the White House, and here's him justifying that.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you a little closer to home. What would it take for you to reconsider the restrictions on the Associated Press? And secondly, some of your advisors are concerned with the Associated Press's style guide, using language and giving guidance to not use words like illegal immigrant or to use phrases like gender affirming care. And they're concerned about that being an encroaching amount of liberalism in the way in which the press writes about things. Do you share those concerns?
Well, I do think that some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous, and I think, frankly, they become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things have happened in the last 3 weeks. And I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't, but the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that, but only the Associated.
Deep breaths. This makes me so upset. Again, just imagine. Okay, everyone. Get into your brain. What? Get in your mind. Imagine for a second. Use your vision skills. Imagine that. Picture Ducey. You know the younger Ducey? Is it Peter Ducey? Peter Ducey. Imagine he did something that Biden didn't like. And Biden banned Fox News from all press events relating to the White House press pool. Now, it's true that you don't have a free speech right to sit in the press room, obviously. But there is a principle at stake there, as MAGA always says, which is that, okay, some random outlet, and they want to be in the White House press room. Sorry, it doesn't really make sense. We don't have enough space, whatever. But one of the major papers who it is as close to unbiased as you could possibly get, and the reason you kick them out is not because there's not space or they don't have enough readership, they're no longer relevant enough, but because they won't say exactly what you want them to say in their newspaper. Well, Fox News has been saying horrific things about Biden, and he never did that. And if he kicked out Fox News from the press room, imagine the heads that would explode on Fox. They would describe themselves to be the greatest victims in the history of television. You know it. It's so upsetting. And I want to circle back to, because I think this demonstrates the point just on the Gulf of America thing. These are the same people who lose their minds when people go, hey, I don't know if the school should be called Robert E. Lee Elementary. Eek. And they go, you're spitting all over tradition. Why do you want us to... Why do you want us to forget about history? What the heck just happened? I just said maybe we could call it Merck University instead. Why are we doing, or university, elementary school? Why are we doing Robert E. Lee? Wasn't that the guy who sort of did the bad stuff? And they go, no, it's history. Or the other example I used last time we talked about this was Columbus Day. When people started calling it Indigenous Peoples Day, they went nuts. Tradition. And now, Gulf of Mexico, that, it's kind of been around a while. They don't see why people might say that's a little weird. And also, I was literally, I'm so excited I remember to tell you guys the story. I was just at a dinner. I actually at the dinner saw some viewers of the show. That was cool. But I brought, not gonna say who, one of my friends, I'll say, was at the table, and he doesn't keep up with politics a ton, but he keeps up a little, right? It's not like he doesn't know anything. And so to give you perspective on how funky this is, someone jokingly referenced the Gulf of America, and he had no idea what they were talking about. They didn't, no idea. Isn't that kind of problematic when we're talking about geographical locations? You kind of want people to be honest. That's why we keep names the same. Every time we think of a new way to describe the United States of America, we don't just change the name, because that'll get a little confusing. And so now there's all these people who will look at you like you're crazy. The look I got, or whoever said it, the look they got from this person who didn't know what that was funky. And so then we had to explain, the Gulf of America. It's like when people put ASAP parenthesis, open parentheses, as soon as possible, close parentheses. Kind of a waste of words. Same thing with this. If we every time have to say the Gulf of America, formerly known as the Gulf of Mexico, we're kind of wasting our breath. You also have this, Dave Keating posting, the U.S. State Department's forcing all of its employees to cancel subscriptions to any Trump unfriendly media. So these are some examples. The Economist, the New York Times, Politico, Bloomberg, Associated Press, Reuters. In other words, some of the outlets that you can go to actually get reliable information. Because I can tell you, you're not going to be as good at managing world affairs, which they have to do at the State Department, if you aren't allowed to read and be subscribed to, sometimes paid subscriptions, to the outlets that actually give you the best, most reliable, most up-to-date, most credible information on those world affairs. And they're saying, no, but they say mean things about Trump. Dumpy. Rolling Stone reports, just as a little random thing, Trump administration wants to let banks jack up overdraft fees. Oh, good. The administration's assault on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is turning into a direct attack on consumers. And we're going to edit this out, but I need to log in to one of my many subscriptions. And we are back, and I'm signed in. While I was signing in, by the way, a couple thoughts came to mind. First, if you want to support the fact that the show has to have subscriptions to so many things, you can do it by clicking the join button below to become a member. But before reading more on this, Jaden mentioned, Jaden, get your mic ready. Tell us what came to mind when you saw The Economist on this list.
No one's going to be able to unsubscribe from The Economist. I tried for what felt like a full day. It was impossible, and I just had to freeze my debit card until the month ended so that it would manually unsubscribe.
Yeah. So good luck. Good luck, Trumpists, trying to unsubscribe from that, because they'll... Oh, you want to unsubscribe? Are you sure you don't want 1 month free? Oh, you want to unsubscribe? Well, call this number. Oh, well, if you do this number, then you can go actually send an email to this email address. And actually, that's the email address is no longer. It's crazy. It reminds me of trying to cancel gym memberships. And it's like, yeah, you have to come to the gym. So you come to the gym to cancel it. And then they're like, oh, no, we meant the gym headquarters in Sri Lanka. It's like, what? All right. The Trump administration is looking to overturn a Biden-era rule limiting major banks' ability to penalize customers with overdraft fees, a reversal that has major banking associations salivating at the mouth. Let's let consumers get ripped off more. Why not? Last week, House Financial Service Committee Chair French Hill and Senate Banking Committee Chair Tim Scott introduced legislation to repeal the rule which eliminated junk fees associated with account overdrafting, capping the penalty at $5, and gave banks several options to manage overdraft costs without placing an excessive burden on consumers. So one of those things that didn't get a lot of press attention, but was just a good thing that Biden did to help you not get so much more in the hole because of the crazy fees. The Trump administration endorsed legislation on Monday with Office of Management and Budget Director and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Interim Director Russ Vought, writing on X that he was grateful that the representatives had introduced legislation overturning the rule. And here is the quote, because this is the takeaway. Passing this important legislation will immediately further President Trump's deregulatory agenda. And at the time the rule was passed, you have it expected to add up to $5 billion in annual overdraft fee savings to consumers, or $225 per household. So Trump says, nah, bring it back. I want you all to have to spend hundreds of dollars more so that the banks can make even more money. But why? Why would they do that? I know you're asking that, Luke. Why would they do that? Well, the real reason might be they want to make their wealthy friends more wealthy, the campaign donors, whatever. But the catch-all justification they've created for themselves is, we're just getting rid of those pesky regulations, baby. And that's what you have to look out for. This is why when people go, well, isn't deregulation good? No, not on everything. Sometimes a regulation is bad. Sometimes it's good. A lot of the regulations like this are good, protecting consumers. But once you convince people deregulation for deregulation's sake is awesome, then you can just start deregulating things that directly hurt them. It's absurd. So many updates. I know that was a lot for one segment, but a seriously grave time and scary implications in the attack that Trump is waging on random everyday benefits that we had, that we didn't think too much about, but that at least someone in the government was looking out for us. But then also, even more consequentially, on freedom of the press, as we reviewed. Share your thoughts in the comments.